Fintech Chatter TV. Presented by Tier 1 people, leaders in fintech executive search. Welcome to Fintech Chatter TV, the show where I invite guests from the fintech community to connect, share stories, strategies, tips, opinions, and of course, the occasional bit of gossip. I'm your host, Dexter Cousins, and in 2022, I'm going to be bringing you a lot more videos like this, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and the little bell so we can notify you of new shows. And if you prefer to listen rather than look at my shiny bonds, then follow the Fintech Chatter podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to find out more about me or Tier 1 people, follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. Today's guest is Adam Grocke of Sherlok. Adam is an award-winning mortgage broker turned fintech entrepreneur. Like many fintech entrepreneurs, he got tired of the big four banks taking advantage of customers. Sherlok's AI engine helps mortgage brokers keep clients, protect their trail book, and generate refinancing leads. Adam aims to disrupt the mortgage industry through single-click financing. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks, mate. Great to be here. I'm in the presence of greatness, so I feel very privileged. Thank you.
Oh, come on, mate. Shucks. Now, look, before we go any further, I just wanted to kind of let the viewers know this is the first in a series of shows that we're doing with founders like yourself, Adam, who are really what I would say the kind of next generation of fintech founders. So, mate, you kind of got the honor of being the very first one, and I thought it would be just awesome to share, the stories and the things that you've learned and kind of, what your take on everything as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and thanks, mate. More than happy to share that and dive deep. And being the first, we're the first for what we're doing in Sherlok, so why not lead first in this series? I'm pretty excited.
Absolutely. Now, before we go any further, though, I do have to kind of legitimize you. I check that you're valid to be on the show, and literally, you cannot be a fintech in Australia without having your company T-shirt worn by Ben Ford. So I've got, I know he's worn the T-shirt, and I think actually in the first kind of Fintech Chatter TV show that we did, he actually mentioned Sherlok as well. So I thought that would be a great kind of lead in to, you sharing with our subscribers a little bit more about Sherlok and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ben Ford would have to have the biggest collection of fintech shirts. So, and I think he's now started the hashtag Sherdog for Sherlok, which is great. So,
what hashtag Sherdog? What on earth is that? You got to tell us the origins of that before we go any deeper.
I think the origins of anything that comes about that's fantastic is a couple beers at a conference, and then got to know him, absolute ripping guy, and then he just came up with the idea of Sherdog, and it's kind of taken off from there. So we actually got it printed on a shirt, on the back of a shirt, and sent that to him as well. So it's just a bit of a token of appreciation, which was good. So.
Awesome. Yeah, Sherlok, first of all, do you want to tell us a little bit about what Sherlok is?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sherlok's a B2B SaaS platform for mortgage brokers and for lenders. And so what we do is we use artificial intelligence to predict the propensity of churn in a mortgage broker's book. And then what we do is we go through a process of retention, which is automating the reduction of that consumer's interest rate on their home loan. So we identify who's at risk of leaving. Then what we do is we actually then reduce their interest rate to a more competitive rate to keep that client with the same lender. Therefore, they stay with their broker for longer, and then the homeowner is happy. And we do that all branded as the broker. So we're positioning the broker as a hero in that process. At the moment, then we're moving into phase 2, which is around single-click switching, which is exciting.
Awesome. So how's first of all, the Sherlok being received by the mortgage advisor network?
Look, it's been really good. I mean, we've had a fairly clear or very clear execution strategy, which was to a bit of a sandwich strategy. So drive the demand from the brokers. I mean, I was previously a broker, and that's how the problem we're solving is a real problem I experienced when I was a mortgage broker. So the best way for us to get to market was to go to the people that are experiencing that problem. They get it instantly. We do get a lot of feedback in terms of is it too good to be true? Does it actually work? Do you just have 200 people in the Philippines entering data, proud to say no, it's all driven by the platform, which is really exciting. So we and then giving it to the brokers are our customers, so giving it to them and getting the feedback that allows us to build out the features and functionality with like a customer-led product strategy has just like supercharged our platform from a CX and UX perspective, and then they drive the conversation through their aggregators, whilst we're also having the conversations with the aggregators at the top.
So I guess behind every great fintech, Adam, there's usually a great origin story that, as you mentioned, typically starts with a beer somewhere or a glass of wine. So how did you kind of get the idea for Sherlok in the first place?
So I was actually, I'll tell you two stories. Remind me in case I forget about the how we came up with the name Sherlok, because there's a couple of beers involved in that one. But I was a mortgage broker. I was a mortgage broker for 12 years, and during that time, as our book, so as you, with a broker, you receive what's called a trail commission, and that trail commission is a monthly payment for every loan you've settled, as long as that consumer stays with you and doesn't move elsewhere. And what we found is that as our book got better, we are bigger, we're dealing with more customers, and also post Royal Commission, we're in this position where we started to experience trail book drop off. So good quality customers were just leaving us. And I just couldn't find a solution. So we looked out, and the only solution was to either get someone onshore or offshore to start trying to reach out to our our clients in our loan book and see if we can help them. But our marketing strategy with EDMs wasn't getting cut through because people's inboxes were getting full. You're not delivering value a lot of the time through those marketing messages, so it just doesn't get the same open rates. And also then it wasn't a sustainable business model to go, hey, we've got to go get 5 or 6 people just to manage our existing clients that may or may not do anything. And then that kind of, we started to break that down and have a look, and we're like, well, how do we even know who we should call? Like, where do you start? If you've got a existing client list of 2,000 clients, do you just start with the oldest ones? Do you start with the ones with the biggest loan amounts? Like, how do we even understand, like who do you?
Come on, mate. It's you start at A, right? You split it and give people A to L, and then M to Z, and then you have arguments about there's more in A to L than there is.
Absolutely, and that's actually, I mean, we joke about it, but that's actually how we started. So, and then it was like, our response rate to that and our return on effort and investment was just horrendous, because it's like these people were like, well, like, what do we have to do? And you're calling them to say, hey, we'd like to review your loan, and there's no value in that. So we're not telling them why they should do it. It was a very, very resource-intensive process. So that's kind of how we built Sherlok, because we went, okay, well, there's a problem here. I can't find a solution. It was a real problem with other mortgage brokers the more we spoke to them. Trail book churn for mortgage brokers or drop-off is around 15% per year, which is significant. So we're really solving a problem. So I actually put together a team. I'm non-technical, so I went out to people that I know and put together an advisory board and said, hey, look, I've got this great idea, and it's about retention and repricing and keeping consumers on a competitive interest rate forever. And then also build off the back of that is then, instantly refinancing consumers from one lender to another, and got some people really excited about that, which was great. And then they introduced me to the smartest developers and tech people they know. So a lot of the time I was asking people, look, if there was one person you could recruit from a developer or technical perspective, like who is it? And then I'd go and speak to them. And we managed to actually build our MVP, really, really high quality MVP cheap, because everyone was on sweat equity agreements at that point in time. So we could get an MVP to market to test with brokers. And it kind of took off from there, which was fantastic. So that just validated that we were onto something. It meant that we minimised, our financial risk up until we'd hit that validation milestone, and also then we had a team ready to go who, once we raised our first capital, were ready just to form our full-time team, which is, we just had our first birthday officially from when we went full-time on it, which is great.
One of the things that I really liked about what you just said there, Adam, is the approach to getting talent. And I think I even kind of posted an article that basically said exactly what you've done, which is a lot of people say, hey, do you know somebody for this job? When the question you should be asking is, if you were hiring, who's the first person that you'd go to? I'm just interested because, I've been saying this as best practice, but I just wondered what was the kind of response that you got to that, and how successful was it?
Yeah, look, people want to help people. Like genuinely, if you're a genuine human being that's kind to other people, people will actually go out of the way to help you or make introductions. And I think that was so hugely successful for us. And we still use this. I would say 70 or 80% of our team has been recruited because they've come recommended from someone, which has just been fantastic. And I mean, we've got an unbelievable team culture. We've got an unbelievable team. And we really did go, well, if you wanted to work with anyone, just give us your top 2 people you would want to work with that can do this role. They don't have to have done it before, but they have to be the right person that that they can pick it up. And then our team just introduces to our future team members. So when we were starting off really early, or for those key recruitments, I mean, people will help out. And it doesn't mean that one intro is going to be that's the right person, because you have to meet with them, make sure that they're the right fit for the culture, make sure that, probably most importantly, they're buying into our very ambitious mission and vision. And that's the key thing, because if they don't really buy into it, they're probably going to be a flight risk, or there's going to be, the time in our business when it's like, we really need to just do this, this, and this, and times are tough, and we need people just to overcome those and push and come together as a team. And you almost want to test that early, especially with your key recruits. But we managed to get, we've got a sales director now who's sold SaaS to 7,000 brokers, and I had a coffee with him and he was just so excited. He's like, I want to go back on the growth train. So I'm like, that excitement was amazing. He'd done it before. The excitement, he was an introduction. Our CMO that we just hired, so our chief marketing officer, like, unbelievably talented. And she was an intro as well, where someone said, hey, look, if you're looking for someone, you've got to meet this person. And it probably was a little bit earlier than what we were anticipating to get someone in that position. But when you meet the right person, you just go, well, we've just got to do it now because it's going to pay dividends.
Yeah. How have you kind of managed that? Because that can also backfire as well, where, we see a lot that the right person's being brought in, but at maybe the wrong time of the business cycle. How have you kind of managed that risk?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So we look at it and we go, well, what's and the question I pose to a lot of these people is, what value do you see bringing to our journey? So I've outlined our journey and our mission and what we're going to do, and what value do you think you can bring? And it's really interesting to hear their responses, because you'll get a gist pretty quickly if that value is actually going to be a step change in your business, or is it just another person that's coming in that can't actually add significant value to your next journey. And so for us, we very much break it down to what's our next validation milestone. And all the effort and focus needs to be on how do we then get to that as quickly as possible in the fastest, most sensible way. So not taking shortcuts, still playing the long game, but how can we get there as quickly as possible? So it's really kind of aligning it to that short term. So, there's been meetings where I'm like, and I met this guy, amazing guy. He's been in fintech before. He's founded companies before. And it's just like, I want you on my team, but I just can't do it now, because like it's going to be 12 months too early. You're going to be sitting here looking for stuff to do. So there has been conversations where it's like, you're the perfect person, but not quite yet, because the value you add is not getting to our next validation gate. It's going to be from that point.
Yeah. What's so when when you look at the stages kind of that you've been through, where would you say you're at in the journey now?
Yeah, we're still, I'd still class us as an early stage fintech. We've just turned one. We've got revenue, which is fantastic. We turned on revenue.
Wow. You've just turned one?
We just turned one, yeah. So we're still very early. I mean, we're lucky in the sense of like our customers, our brokers are talking about us. So now we've built up very quickly. We've built up this this brand recall where if anyone in the broking industry says repricing or retention, the first thing they start to think about now, or the first thing they regurgitate is Sherlok. They say, "Oh, is that Sherlok?" Which for us to do that on a very small startup budget quickly is I think I pinch myself every day about that. So we're still very very early. It was only the first half of last year, so that was 2021 that we were still in beta. We launched our product in July last year to a handful of brokers. That was tremendously received. And also then we looked at all the features and functionality that the brokers want, which then started to form our roadmap. So we very much listened to our customers and built that out as quickly as possible. And then we asked them to pay for our platform in October last year. And so we're post-revenue, which is good. We did our last round pre-revenue, and a lot of investors were like, are people going to pay for this? And we knew that they would from the feedback and the problem that we're solving. So we're sitting. We sit about 200 ARR at the moment since turning on revenue in October, and that's growing by between sort of 60 or 70K per month ARR at the moment, which is really cool.
Wow. Mate, you really have, filled what I would say is the honor of the very first kind of startup that we're featuring in this new series. They are absolutely incredible.
Yeah,
you must be really proud.
Look, it's I'm so proud. We've got some. I can't announce them yet because we're under NDAs and we're going through integrations. But we've got some massive strategic partnerships that we've now got signed off, which will accelerate that to the next level. But I'm super proud, but also it's the founder's curse as well, where you're so optimistic and you're so hungry to go quicker that you kind of sometimes do forget to go. And it's not until you talk to other people and they say that's really good, and you're like, oh, is it? Because I kind of would have liked to be at 500 now. So it's that I think it's good to drive and keep pushing and go, look, can we be bigger? Can we be better? But it's not until you realize we've actually done an incredible job in the first 12 months of business to get to this point. So absolutely proud. To come from a non-tech background, being a mortgage broker, leaving a very secure business and job to go into a startup, which is extremely high risk. And all credit to my wife. I've got an amazing wife who she just says to me, look, are we going to lose the house? And I'm like, no, we won't lose the house. She's like, okay, go for it. So, and you need that support, because otherwise, I think you can't go all in, and I think you need to go all in a startup.
You talked there about support, Adam. I've got to say, listening to just how you're going about the business and the approach that you've got, it's like there's a lot of things that you seem to be doing right, when normally in that first year, it's at the time where you make probably the most mistakes. Is that just blind luck, or have you got a secret that you want to share with us? People, advisors that you go to that have helped you on this journey?
Yeah, there's the best thing I think is startup.
Or are you just totally awesome, right?
I wish I could say that, but no. Look, I think it's there's probably a couple of things. Like absolutely, the first thing I say to any other founder that I meet, or anyone that's doing anything, I'm like, go get the best advisory board you can find, because they will stop you making silly mistakes early. And they'll come in and they'll question why you do things. And it may not be that they've got the answers, but they just go, well, is that really the right approach, or should we be doing this now? And I think where we've been successful is we've actually listened to that advice. Even if it's hard advice, we've listened to it. Even if it's confronting advice, we've listened to it. And then most importantly, and I think this is the number one thing you have to do, you just have to execute on it, because our advantage is agility. Our advantage is to get our key stakeholders in a room within 2 hours, workshop something within an hour, have a direction, and go, well, we're going to go do this, and we're looking for this feedback, and if that's the feedback, let's double down and let's just go all in on that. And I think that's been really important. We have conversations, and I speak to the advisory team on a weekly basis at an individual level, because they're all selected for a specific role. So some have gone through the IPO process within 4 years. Some have built SaaS fintech platforms and sold it to mortgage brokers. Others have created a category in a different industry. And that's what we're doing. So I've really tried to handpick people that I can go to at any time and just say, hey, look, I've got this problem. Let's just chat about it. And it's amazing that what you pick up from those conversations is so important. And as a founder, and I'm a sole founder, which I'm kind of learning is more difficult than if you've got a co-founder, because co-founders just constantly bounce ideas. So early on, when you've only got a small team, you wear a lot of the burden on your shoulders, because you really need to, and having an advisory team is really good to talk to about that. But it comes down to execution at the end of the day. You can have the best idea, you can have the best advice. If you don't listen to it and you don't execute, it's a complete waste of time. So I think we've been lucky. I mean, I say we've been lucky, but we've jumped at the opportunity when it's presented, and been brave enough to do that, I think. So, I mean, there's been times when, we had a strategy, we were going down that, and then all of a sudden our wait list of brokers that we couldn't service started to grow. And so we made a decision, okay, well, we're going to increase our burn. We're going to go and get another 4 developers, and we're going to diversify across platforms where we collect our data from. And we're going to do that as quickly as possible. I mean, that's a big call when you've got a small amount of money left in your in your bank account to go, we're just going to do this. We've shortened our runway by 6 months, but, and that paid off, and that paid off really well. So I think being bold enough to make some of those calls as well helps. And sometimes through the journey, what I've found is it gets to a point and it's like, okay, well, this is now the logical step. So it's not jumping at different things or making silly decisions, but there's a point where you've problem solved it and you've discussed it with enough people that you go, okay, well, this just makes sense now. This is the right step. And taking that first step then opens up like 3 different paths you can go down that you couldn't actually see before. So,
So when you I guess you talked before a little bit about your wife and that kind of support as well, and the risk, and I guess you mentioned there that it was going all in. Having gone all in now, what have you learned about yourself as a leader, as a business owner, that perhaps you didn't kind of really factor in prior to you taking the leap of launching your own startup?
Really interesting question. I'll probably break it down to 2 things. The first one is get rid of the fear of failure. And I know like every startup says that, or everyone says that, like, don't be scared to fail, but it's human nature. It's like, okay, I'm actually like we're doing this, and it's going to be, in your mind, it's like, well, this is going to be really embarrassing if we fail, right? And we've got investor money. Like, what are the investors going to think of us? But I think what helped me get over that personally is I actually just mapped out plan B. And I'm like, I'm cool with plan B. Like plan B, if everything absolute worst case scenario, plan B is, my wife and I and our kids go live in a caravan park. I'm like, that actually sounds pretty cool. Like I half get excited about that. So it's like,
and there's so much kind of nonsense advice out there as well, Adam. Where you'll have these motivational speakers will put stuff up. If you've got a plan B, you're not serious about being successful, and all this junk. It's like, what have you got to say to kind of some of these kind of memes that are out there, and these urban myths that they're just these statements that you kind of, oftentimes I get quite angry, right? Because I feel like, hey, you're there, you've never done this yourself, and yet you're dishing out advice to people that actually isn't the right advice in most cases.
Oh, so look, you're spot on. I mean, talk's cheap, right? Anyone can say anything. It sounds motivational, it sounds cool, but unless you've actually lived that pathway and walked that road, it's really hard to. It's really hard to understand it, and it's really hard to know what you would do in that situation. And that's probably what I've learned, is that being in that situation and getting very comfortable with, okay, well, this is what it is, but you know what? We've got a clear strategy, we're executing, we know where we're going, and we know what we have to hit. And all the effort, all the energy, all the passion, the motivation, everything's going into that. At the end of the day, you get very comfortable with, you don't get comfortable with plan B, but you get very comfortable that if you ended up with plan B, you've actually left no stone unturned. And I think that's the thing. It's like, okay, if it's not meant to be, it's not because we didn't try. It's not because we didn't execute. We did everything we could have done with the knowledge we had at that point in time.
Yeah, and I think, kind of looking back, there's this distinction that I would make to people as well, is that, making mistakes isn't the same as failure.
Founders, what I'm learning is you've got to have like an unbelievable sense of confidence at the execution and where you're going. And I don't see that as egotistical or being arrogant. It's just it's a self-confidence in yourself and the team and what you can do to go, well, we're in a position where, we're doing this and it's happening, and we're going to make it work. And I think it's quite powerful to bring the team along on that journey as well. Not to instill false confidence, but actually then to just make them really believe that, like, it's easy to get excited about a mission and a vision. That excitement fades really quickly. Literally it can be an hour after you've had a conversation with them. So how do you turn that into motivation that's ongoing motivation? And really what you're trying to achieve is belief that you and your team and your advisors, your strategy, your customers, everyone's loving it and knows where you're going and wants to achieve that. And I think that belief is, as a founder, you just have to drive that belief, personally. And one thing that frustrates me is like raises are so heavily celebrated, which is like,
that's it. Yeah. I always think, what you're celebrating, you've just taken out a massive, massive loan that you've got to pay back.
Absolutely. And also like you've just given away equity, which is the most expensive, like capital that you can access. But like you absolutely have to do it. It's this necessary evil in startups, right?
Now, you talked about being a solo founder earlier and it being difficult, but it sounds from what you've just said there, that also does have some benefits, particularly when it comes to execution. What's your kind of view if you got the opportunity to do it again? Do you think you would go and find a co-founder, or do you think you'd kind of stick with the path that you've followed so far?
That's a really interesting question. Depends on when you ask me that question. I think my response would change. Right. So,
when you want a holiday.
That's right. I don't want a holiday, or when I'm not sitting in a corner crying because, we thought this was going to work and it didn't. It's one of those things. I think having a co-founder or someone that right from the start is like walking in the same shoes as you with the same risks and same everything would be something I would want to experience, to just have that relationship with someone where you go, hey, this is on my mind. And it's just a real raw, like deep emotional chat and connection and problem solving. I think that would be really useful as a founder, because you do find yourself like, you just shoulder like heaps of that stuff yourself. And that I think would be really interesting to go through. Hopefully Sherlock's, uber successful, and we reshape the industry, which is what we're trying to do. And I've started businesses before, and I'll always do it. I love doing it. So I think doing something with a co-founder eventually would be interesting and appealing to me, just to see how that dynamic changed.
On that part, what you've shared there is it's pretty much every conversation that I have with a chief exec, where I think they're caught in this really tough place where they've got a board on one side and then, there are people on the other side. And it's almost like sometimes they feel like they're filling in a shit sandwich
Mm-hmm.
that, and they've got nobody to talk to, and then I catch up for a coffee with them, and it's almost like they just go, so I'm the one person that they feel they can actually just let it off their chest and let off that steam. But look, why I kind of raised that was that aspect of leadership. We've talked about the investor side, but what about the people side? I mean, it's been a really difficult kind of transition for leaders to kind of adapt to this remote workforce and actually being able to create and build and get things off the ground when you've got this dispersed workforce who can be right across the world. How have you found kind of that aspect of leadership, Adam?
Yeah, it's look, it's been a learning experience, because I think what we've found is you've got like everyone was trying to figure out, okay, how is this going to work, right? As soon as COVID hit, how's this going to work? We were lucky enough that COVID had been around for 12 months, right? We kind of knew what we were coming into, so we didn't have to change a whole organization. Which, I mean, it would have been extremely difficult to be a CEO of a large organization and go, okay, I've got to do a fundamental shift through a whole organization, which normally takes, anywhere from 2 to 5 years. And I've got to do this in 2 months. Like, how do you do that? And changing a large organization is a lot more difficult than a startup where you go, okay, well, today we're going to try Teams. Today we're going to try Zoom. Okay, which one's better? Tomorrow, this is the one we're using, right? It's like super simple. It's super easy. So we were able to adapt really quickly. The one thing I found that was probably the hardest for us in building our team is you lose human connection, which is probably the biggest. It's part of your attraction as a startup, and it's what you lose. And then also that then impacts your culture. So it's really hard to connect to people. And even if you just, you go and have a conversation with someone online, it's completely different to having a conversation with them face to face. You can't pick up on their body language. You can't, the jokes and the interaction is just completely different. And so that was probably something which was we just had to get used to, and then try and find different ways that we can nurture that. So, I mean, we now do a weekly quiz where everyone jumps online. Everyone's got to be on there. They jump online. We give away a $25 Uber Eats voucher to the winner, and that just creates a little bit of camaraderie and conversation when the team hasn't seen each other for a little while. We also have, we have a bit of a unwritten rule. It's more of an encouragement that we really want to see people in our office, 2 days a week, like minimum, because it's good to then connect and have those water cooler conversations. And, we've got a table tennis table is like, I think you have to have that if you're in fintech. So,
yeah, mate.
So, it just creates this like whole new conversation and dynamic, and that builds up relationships. And I think as a founder, what you need to learn to leverage responsibly is relationships. And if you've got really strong relationships, you can leverage that to extract value. And by extracting value, it also means that it benefits that person, my journey as a founder and our business. And I think that's really important, not to abuse, but to, positively leverage those relationships to get the outcome you need. And that's really hard over Zoom, where you're just like, I can't read you. I can't connect with you. That strength in the relationship just isn't there.
Yeah. Now, Adam, I wanted to, I guess, go back to something that you'd said earlier, which is how you got the name for Sherlok. Do you want to share that story?
Yeah, we had a pretty ugly name to start with. I mean, and this is actually one of the things I learned on my journey, or I heard a couple times, is really good saying that stuck with me. Actually, there's two that have stuck with me, and I'll loop back into this story. Because one of them was, if you launch your product and you're not embarrassed by it, you've waited too long. And that's really stuck with us, and that's embedded in our culture now, where it's like, get it in the hands of your consumers, because they're going to tell you what you should focus on next. And that's been, that was probably one of the best things. So we had a really embarrassing name to start with, right? But you get it in the hands of consumers, they go, oh, that doesn't make sense. What does that mean? And then we're like, okay, we've got to come up with a name, because like,
what was it? Come on, you can't.
It was called Refi Me. And no one kind of, it was, everyone's like, oh, Refi refund me, refine me, and then everyone was pronouncing it wrong, and no one got it. And they're like, "What does that mean?" And I'm like, it's like refinance me, and this is where we're trying to end up, and it just didn't make sense at all. So then we got three of us together, and we're like, okay, went to a pub. We each had sticky notes, and we're like, we're not leaving here until we've got our name. And it probably took about
yeah. The consumer research went out the window.
and so we'd all sit there and we'd just write down, and then we had this table, would have been like legitimately would have been 3 meters long, in a packed pub, somewhat packed, and we've taken up the whole space with coloured sticky notes with just random names that we've thrown out for the business. And then we started sorting them, and we got to a point in time, and the names get crazier the more beers you have as well, which is kind of good, right? It gets the creative juices flowing. And then we're sitting there and we've gone, okay, and we took all these different angles and tacks, like what do we do? How can we build around that? Anyway, one of us just threw out Sherlok loans. They said, oh, what about Sherlok loans? And we all just laughed, and we're like, okay, cool. Like that actually felt like it's our brand, it's our position and what we wanted to do. So we actually landed on that. So we called ourselves first raise. We called ourselves Sherlok Loans. We then pushed it out to our customers, and they're like, oh, our customers, so the brokers were like, oh, like you guys are a lender, and there was this confusion, and we're like, okay, well that's really good feedback. Let's just drop the loans and call ourselves Sherlok. So it was interesting to go out of all that, and we would have had 200 names written on this, these post-it notes, and we would have looked like clowns in this pub, but. It kind of like it's almost like that journey as a founder. You do it and you problem solve. You got all these options. You're doing it and all these ideas, and then one comes up and you're like, that just feels right. Now it felt right, but missed the mark with our consumers until we dropped loans. So we listened to them, really quickly changed it, dropped the loans, and then that stuff from there.
Awesome. Now, Adam, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, I guess, just your thoughts on fintech industry in general. So first up, look, other than Sherlok, what's got you excited about fintech right now?
I think probably two parts to that. There's a lot of businesses that call themselves fintech, and I'm like, you're not really a fintech, right? You've got a flashy website, and then you've just got people sitting behind you, doing manual stuff, right? So
2022 and it's still happening.
It's crazy. It's like, and like
the generation.
Oh, I'm just like, oh man, I'm like, are you really in the fintech awards?
With a call center of people who've got 8L and
it's just crazy. So that's like, so if I look at like true fintech, which is like, highly scalable, platform based. And you don't need 3,000 people to run it, so to speak. And I absolutely get manually hacking right. We do it. You manually hack something and then you automate it. So I mean, I really love where the industry's going. So I love the fact that, and it's so hard to predict what it's going to look like in 4 or 5 years time. But I really love the trend that's going in like. NFTs. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of crypto, but if you look at the innovation within funding against crypto assets, I think it's a really cool concept.
Yeah.
So I think kind of what excites me is those businesses that are really pushing the boundaries in terms of like concepts and how they're going to apply different concepts to what the markets might look like in 5 or 10 years time. I mean, that's really interesting. I mean, they're building stuff and they don't even know if there's a customer yet because the customer's not here. And I think it's extremely high risk, and I think it's really cool. And it's almost like, the motor racing, like they're kind of testing what's actually going to be legitimate. So I would hate to be them testing it because a lot of those businesses will fail, but they're doing all the learnings that we can then go, okay, cool, we're going to take this part and this part and this part, and we're going to bring that into our business now. And it's kind of like what they do in motorsport with like Formula One. So Formula One, like, ultra innovation, they test everything, and then eventually it'll flow down to the cars that everyone uses, right? But you wouldn't want to own or run a Formula One business because they probably don't make much money. I mean, it's really cool, but it's not. Majority of them aren't, financially viable businesses, so to speak. So
Yeah.
I think that's probably what excites me, is those people that are really pushing the boundaries and they're out there, they're taking those risks, and then seeing what those learnings are and then how we can adopt that to what we're doing today.
And I guess as somebody who, you know, is kind of fairly new to the fintech industry here in Oz, what's been your kind of general take of the health of the industry here, and kind of the support and the ecosystem as well?
Yeah, it's I would describe it as it's still in its infancy. Like if you compare it to other markets, in the sense that, you know, we've got some amazing fintechs that have done incredible. They've had incredible journeys, right? And I think that's really, I mean, that's amazing. But when I say in its infancy, is I think a fintech industry, and any innovation startup ecosystem benefits the most when it's not just one or two that are going out and shooting the lights out. I thought that's incredible, right? And everyone strives to do that, and that's their ambition. But it's really when the critical mass beneath that are all doing extremely well. And I think that's when you get a fundamental shift in any ecosystem. It's not your two or three, you know, in the headlights that are, you know, kicking goals, and it's really that critical mass that sits below that. So are we there yet? Look, I think from what I've experienced, I think we're not. It's in its infancy. It's absolutely heading in the right direction. What we probably lack is the assistance with risk taking. So what I mean by that is probably when it comes down to early on people taking risks on founders or businesses, that it's like, you know, this may or may not work, but you've got to support them at that point in time. And I think that's the grassroots, that's the core of innovation, is going, well, I don't even know if this is going to work, but like someone support me so we can actually validate it. And I think that then drives that critical mass, the next layer where it's like, okay, we validated that. You start moving through that, you know, that life cycle of a startup. So I think so I think we've got a bit of way to go. But then you also bring that back into, you know, the size of our country, right? Australia as a country is a small country. We have a small population.
Yeah.
So I think we're playing above our weight, absolutely, from a per capita. So I think we're in our infancy. We're absolutely heading in the right direction. We're actually playing above our weight. So it's going to be exciting where it goes. And also, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff happening in Australia. There's a lot of cool businesses doing cool things.
And finally, Adam, what can we expect from Sherlok in this next 12 months?
Yeah, look, it's going to be a big year for us. We've formalised a couple strategic milestones that we wanted to meet, which are going to be a game changer for us and our trajectory. They're going to be a game changer for the industry, which is really cool. So we are focusing, I mean, some of our values and our mantra and how we're going to do things. I mean, we're all about single click. So, you know, we've brought single click repricing to market for mortgage brokers. We're working on single click refinancing. So how can we single click switch a homeowner from one lender to another? Whenever you do these things, you build up loyalty with your consumers and who benefits from what we're building. And then you build up, you know, people that don't really like you because you're cutting out margins, or you're, you know, repricing back book home loans at scale, which has never been done before. So I think, you know, for us, it's all about growth in the broker market. It's getting lenders on board our single click refinancing. So it's going to be a big year for us. Like, it's super exciting. And that's really what we're looking for. Like, the key things that we want to achieve this year is, you know, we want to get, you know, ideally we've got 2,000 brokers on board our platform by the end of this year, which is a massive, ambitious, you know, goal for us. And we want to bring single click refinancing to market with a proof of concept that's been tested and is then rolled out. So if it doesn't happen this year, it'll happen next year. So it's really just a case of how can we shorten the cycle for us to get that to market as quickly as possible. But it's going to be pretty exciting.
Awesome. Okay, people, if you're listening to this or you're watching this, I've got to tell you, I think Adam's like one of the best founders for 12 months in that I've ever met in the whole time I've been doing this. So if you're thinking about what's next and you're interested in careers, Adam, where can people find out more about jobs at Sherlok?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's a personal approach for us. So hit me up on LinkedIn, absolutely. We've got a website you can check us out, which is sherlok.com.au. It's Sherlok without a C because we're a cool fintech. You got to drop a letter or a vowel, right?
Yeah, mate. I've actually, I'm still waiting for the first ever fintech with no vowels.
That will be very interesting.
So mate, you could have dropped the E and the O, right? And you could have been
absolutely. Oh, the time we'd have to spend on SEO to try and get people to actually go to our site.
Oh, mate, you've done it now. It's too late anyway. Yeah. Somebody else can run with that. And if there's investors out there, people interested in supporting you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
LinkedIn or email. I mean, my contact details, both my mobile and my email are on my LinkedIn. So we are doing, we're building towards our Series A this year, which is really exciting. So we are going to be opening up our Series A. We're not raising at the moment, but we're preparing for that. So if people want to follow our journey, I mean, what I say is, look, let's catch up virtually, catch up face to face. We'll tell you where we're at and what we want to and what we are executing on. And then, if in 3 years, if in 3 months or 4 months time, we come back and we say, hey, we've done all this. We said we're going to do this and it's the right fit. Then we'd absolutely welcome them into our cap table and our journey moving forward.
Adam, I've got to congratulate you. I'm really grateful that you've come on the show to help us with this series. I mean, what a start. Just incredible what you've achieved and the team have achieved in this first 12 months. And super excited to see where you guys land up.
No, Congrats. Thanks, mate. Absolutely a pleasure. And thank you very much for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Fintech Chatter TV. Presented by Tier 1 People. Leaders in Fintech Executive Search.